Hi, I'm Joyce from Salubrious Events, and I have here with me Dr. Vladimir Dubaj, who is a neuroscientist, a parapsychologist, a university lecturer, and anything else? And a
No.
a paranormal investigator. Yeah. What does a neuroscientist do?
Neuroscientists,
Yeah.
they essentially look at the way that the brain works, how the neurons will actually communicate, and how essentially the whole brain functions. Ideally, I guess, to one of the biggest questions in neuroscience would be consciousness.
Yeah.
How do people actually become conscious or self-aware? And that's kind of one of the questions that's kind of driven me into the parapsychology field of all things, because there was that suggestion that during for ghosts, for example, or out-of-body experiences, there was a possibility that consciousness might, survive outside of the body for a short period of time at least. So that's what got me interested in out-of-body experiences and then ghost research.
Okay. Yes, that's a huge area and very fascinating. So do you think that consciousness does exist outside the body, or is it all in the brain or something else?
I would like to think that it does exist outside of the body.
Okay.
That's just my personal subjective opinion, but there seems to be quite a bit of evidence, perhaps anecdotal evidence, that consciousness may not always be linked directly to the brain, to the neurons themselves. There have been plenty of examples where people have managed to get information from outside of their own bodies. So during a near-death experience, they might find information about themselves or relatives or other people, other situations, which are then later corroborated. There was a symposium at the United Nations back in 2008 where quite a few doctors were actually saying this area of consciousness needs to be further funded and further explored, because the doctors themselves working with critically ill patients and so on keep seeing examples where consciousness doesn't seem to be embedded in the brain. That they find patients who've got irreversible dementia who become just prior to their death become completely lucid. They remember for the first time in 10 years, their siblings or their partners and so on, and they become completely lucid for about 5 minutes just prior to their death. And lots of other little examples that the doctors are saying, hang on, this doesn't seem to quite fit in with our model of consciousness being linked 100% to the brain and neural activity. Yeah.
Wow. We don't hear much about this in the wider media, do we?
Yeah, it's largely dismissed as being an aberration. And when it comes to theories, scientific theories, the first thing that happens is the little anomalies kind of get swept to the side because it's not quite significant enough for them to take notice of it. And if they do take notice of it, that means they have to acknowledge that there's something seriously wrong with the current theory. It usually just gets dismissed or hidden.
Yes. So the threat to the foundation of what they already learnt would have to be questioned again.
It has to build up and reach a critical mass before it's accepted and people start looking into it fully. Yeah. Wow. Until then, it just remains in the fringes.
How common do you think it is for doctors to actually see these anomalies of consciousness surviving outside death?
I don't think it happens that frequently, as in it doesn't happen every patient that comes in, but it certainly happens with enough frequency with the volume of patients that people are seeing, and there's so many around the world. You'd be surprised how many stories come from doctors and nurses who not just experience examples of consciousness leaving the body, but actually seeing ghosts, particularly ghosts. Almost every hospital that I've spoken to, there's a ghost story to tell. Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yes.
But at the same time, they don't want to talk about it because it's not considered credible and unscientific. So they actually just keep it hush hush.
Okay. Is there room for it in science?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course there is.
Like, can we...
If it's accepted, but that's the
Yeah.
problem. I don't think it's accepted particularly widely at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Have you had some of your own paranormal experiences?
I've had a couple of minor ones. So one thing I should say is almost everyone that I've met who started off doing their own paranormal investigations, ghost research, almost everyone who started their own groups have had some sort of personal transformative experience. They would have seen a full-blown apparition that interacted with them, and that got their curiosity, thinking, hang on, this doesn't explain my idea of how the world works. And that's how they got into it. So they had this massive, life-changing experience, and they went into it. I've kind of gone into it from the more theoretical side. I was thinking, hang on, there seems to be evidence, or seems to be some sort of suggestion that consciousness might survive outside the body. Let's go and investigate the more extreme cases. And throughout my time that I've been doing investigations, there's been plenty of things that have happened, but from a stricter scientific perspective, we had to kind of dismiss a lot of it as being either noise or something that's unsubstantiated. So our threshold criteria for something that's legitimately anomalous is a lot higher than most people. But even then, there's been a few things over the years that have really made me wonder what's going on. Never seen a full-blown apparition, which is kind of the ideal, but there've been a lot of auditory anomalies that we couldn't explain. There's a couple of them. J-Ward Museum, J-Ward, what's it called? Prison, the prison for the criminally insane. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
There was a case there where a couple of our group members were sitting there. Perfect quietness. There was no wind outside. It's incredibly quiet in the hall, although there's lots of echoing. And all of a sudden, they just start hearing these banging noises, like the doors are being slammed, the prison doors are being slammed shut, and it's getting progressively closer and closer to them. And that we couldn't explain because we were shut off, we were locked in. There was nobody else could have come inside, so we couldn't quite explain how that could have happened. Even though we did look around for possibility of possums and things like that. But probably the most impressive was myself and a colleague of mine who actually saw a orb with our eyes just floating in a room. This big orange basketball-sized kind of orb through a room.
Large.
And sorry.
Oh, that's quite large, basketball size.
It was. And initially, first reaction was that it's some sort of intruder with a torch shining the light through the window. But we searched the premises. We came back 3 or 4 times looking at different theories. We thought it might have been a helicopter shining light through a window, electronics inside the room. And every time we've dismissed it, we could not for the life of us figure out how that actually occurred. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So was it solid or was it transparent?
No, to me it looked transparent, and it just pulsating very slowly. Only lasted about 20-30 seconds. And in all honesty, this was at 2 or 3 in the morning. My first thought was my eyes were playing tricks on me. And this is where it becomes very important that we have multiple witnesses, because if it was just myself, we would have been forced to dismiss that as evidence. But because there was another person there with me, I said, hey, can you see that? Turned around and they saw it as well. So they corroborated what I saw. That way we could actually accept it as being something genuine. It wasn't just a figment of my imagination.
Wow. And it was just floating across the room?
No, stationary. It was stationary in a doorway.
Yeah, right. Interesting. What was your feelings at the time?
As I said, at the time, my first thought was, there was a trespasser on the property. This was a very big property and fenced off, but very large complex of about 50 or 60 buildings. And we thought it might have been some kids with torches, but the only window that was open at the time, that wasn't shut, we were actually looking through at the time that this thing occurred. So that was my first thought. It was a torch, but then I realised the colour's wrong. There was no way for it to get through the window. And that's when we started thinking, hang on, how could we reproduce this?
Right. Were you scared at all? Were you scared?
No.
Okay.
It wasn't scary at all.
Uh-huh. Have you done any investigations where you were actually quite scared?
Only one, and that was very early on when I started doing investigations, and I made the mistake of doing an investigation by myself, which is pretty. It's not a good idea, just for safety reasons purely. And so at that stage, I was by myself on top of this, on the second floor of this building, which was abandoned, and 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I could hear footsteps coming up the staircase. And that was scary because I knew that I was by myself in the building.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would not do that.
I'm going to ruin this, but the footsteps ended up being the window being knocking in the wind. So it sounded like, I didn't know that for another 3 or 4 hours until the morning. But yeah, it was a pretty scary moment where I'm thinking something's coming up the stairs.
Wow. Have you captured any pictures or sounds in your investigation?
Yes, we've captured lots of sounds. Pictures, not so much. Obviously, a lot of orb type of activity, but 100% of that we've dismissed as being dust. The curious thing we have caught on camera was actually we find that in a few investigations where things are happening, you actually find it interferes with the cameras. So the cameras actually can go out of focus or can actually reset themselves, or something goes wrong. So there's been in one case, every time we've brought our little CCTV system in, so a little PC computer with 4 or 5 night vision cameras, just this one particular location, the PC the software is damaged. We have to reinstall the software. So we couldn't get any video footage during the night. We had to take it back, reinstall the software before it would start working. And it's never happened anywhere else except for this particular location. And the probably more impressive one was when we had a camera set up during a night, and it went offline and then went back online in about 5 seconds. And this system's never done that in 10 years. But in this particular instance, it's essentially turned off and back on again. And it coincided precisely with the time that one of our team members, who's also psychic and sensitive, actually said, oh, hang on, I thought I felt something or I saw something run past the door. And so you can actually see the camera cuts out, comes back in, comes into focus, and then you can see the colleague pop his head around the door to look to see if something walked past. Wow. So it seems like he sensed something just at the time that the camera was affected. Which was interesting coincidence, I suppose.
Yeah, wow. How long have you been doing this for?
I actually haven't kept track. I started, I think, about 2008 or so. So this is when I actually started doing the ghost investigations. So about 12 years or so.
Yes, 12 years. Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, I had more hair back when I started.
Have you had any recent cases? Any investigations lately?
No, a lot of we've had a couple of private investigations, private residences that have had things going along, and so we've had some interesting reports from them, including a case of temporary possession, which was very, very, very disturbing for the occupants. It's actually a really good story. Do I have time to?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Are you able to tell us?
Yes, yes. I
Yeah.
won't tell who the people were or where it is, but
Yeah.
it was a couple with kids, and the couple were renovating the kitchen. So I think that might have stirred up a few things. But in this one instance, the husband was sitting in the living room watching TV, and his wife comes into the room, sits down, and she's just sitting there watching TV. And all of a sudden, she gets up, walks to a set of drawers, picks up a torch, and walks back to where her husband is, and just stands there next to him. And he realizes that he looked up at her and realized that she wasn't quite herself. She was just very vacant looking, straight ahead. And he's thinking, what's going on? And just at that point, the power goes out in the house.
Huh.
So she turns the torch on, and after about 30 seconds or 40 seconds, the light comes back on again. The power comes back onto the house. She turns the torch off, puts it on the table, sits down, and when her husband spoke up and said, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on?" She had no memory of the event. He told her that she took the torch out, brought it over, lit the room up, and she didn't believe it until she saw the torch on the table. So that actually scared them quite considerably, and probably prompted them to give me a call.
Wow, understandably so. That's pretty scary. So what did you do with that case?
In fact, in a lot of cases, people want to have the house cleared.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, as I said, my investigation is more scientifically based. We want to try and understand how things are occurring. And I'm not qualified to go around clearing places to get rid of ghosts. But we do know quite a few people who perform the service, so we usually refer them to those people, and there's a very good success rate. In this instance, actually, the activity seemed to be focused around the lady, and I think she was particularly open to being followed, or she was like a magnet to these things. And in fact, just giving her a few ideas about how to protect herself, how to shield herself from these things, seemed to do the job. So I gave her some instructions, and 6 months later, she said it's been fine. There's been no problem whatsoever.
Yes.
Whatever was there was actually quite benevolent. There was nothing malevolent in that instance, so she was quite happy with that.
Oh, okay. Is that what the psychic said? Is that what one of your psychic colleagues they picked up, that it wasn't?
No. In that particular instance, we didn't have a psychic there, but just based on the description of the things that were happening, and the fact that even that possession case where she had the torch seemed to be of a benefit, of a beneficial thing. She was helping them out, so to speak.
Yes.
And so even though it was still frightening for them because they didn't know what's happening, there was nothing really malevolent or nothing that was trying to scare them as such. It was just activity.
Okay. Wow. And the husband, how did he deal with that? Was he a believer? And
I think they were both believers.
okay.
So yes, no, they were quite happy with the turnout, as in the conclusion. I haven't spoken to them for about a year or so. The last time I spoke to them, they said they were quite happy with the activity there. There was no activity.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Great. And did you do one at Mount Martha?
Done several investigations at Mount Martha.
Yeah. Anything that did you?
We had a person who used to work there, and so he actually told us he used to work late at night, and told us quite a few visual disturbances there. So he actually saw apparitions of ladies in period dress costumes, as lots of visual stuff for themselves, as well as olfactory of all things. So actually walking through the corridor and just hitting this wall of an aroma like a perfume, and once you walk a bit further on, it disappears again. So it just seemed to be located in a very, very small space in the corridor, and you could smell it as you walk past.
Okay, wow. I was just in Mount Martha actually, at the community centre.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the lady was giving me a historical tour, and yeah, she said there's definitely ghosts there, like regular ghosts, and she said, you know, to be respectful of them. She's not actually a fan of ghost investigation, but she just said be respectful, and if she asked if we get any pictures or recordings, to let her know, and yeah.
Okay.
Did
she
you?
The lady.
Sorry.
Is she the lady that had the ghost in her car? They tried to steer her off the road.
I don't know. She didn't say anything about that. So yeah, so we're going to do another investigation, or you're going to be there as well on the March the 13th, Friday the 13th, at Mount Martha, and we'll also have Brett and Rochelle, who are mediums, at this investigation. So we've still got a small amount of tickets left. So if you really want to join us, do buy tickets soon. Tell me more about your organisation, the is it the Paranormal Australian
Parapsychological Research Association,
That's
or
right,
APRA. APRA. So it was started by myself and Michael Watson, who's the vice president at the moment. Michael Watson and I, we actually met on a forum. It was like a chat forum for a local group that used to go out and arrange investigations, and we found that people kept saying, "Oh, let's go and arrange something. Let's go and investigate, different parts of Victoria." Nothing actually eventuated. So Michael and I decided just to start investigating, by ourselves, and that's kind of how the group began.
Okay. Wow. Cool.
Since then, we've tried to, we've gotten a few more members. We're trying to focus on the more scientifically minded interpretation of things. So, over the years, we've got people, obviously myself in neuroscience, we've got someone in forensics, we had people with engineering backgrounds, a whole bunch of different backgrounds to try and get a different perspective on the phenomena, just to try and get a better idea of what's actually going on.
Okay. Interesting. Great. And you're also going to be speaking at the Ghostbusters of Australia Conference on the 21st of March.
Yes.
So you're doing a do-it-yourself investigation talk?
Essentially, what I would like to talk about is actually the phenomena and how it actually manifests. So, traditionally, investigations are usually done with cameras, with voice recorders, with magnetic field meters, and so on. And so the talk itself actually focuses on these things, the different types of equipment that we use, and interpreting the actual evidence, the data. Okay, because a lot of the way I see it, there's kind of three tiers, three different levels of investigation. The first level is kind of there for the entertainment value, just to get the fright. People go in there to get a fright. The second level is to people go in there with cameras and equipment to get the proof or evidence. You can see that all over YouTube. And the third tier is kind of the going in there to try and understand what's actually happening, which is the kind of the next tier. And as you go up those tiers, the quality or the credibility of the evidence needs to go up higher and higher. So we need to be more and more certain that we're getting genuine evidence and not just, for example, with orb activity, lots of people have photographs of orbs, and it can easily be dismissed as dust. Okay, so as we go to towards the more scientific perspective, we need to raise the standards a little bit, and I guess that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, the phenomena, where it occurs in the energy spectrum. So cameras, temperature, magnetic fields, and so on. And then also how you can actually eliminate the mundane explanations, the easily explainable events, and take in just the good quality signal to try and kind of get a better understanding of it. And what that helps lead to is data that will then allow you to look at things like larger patterns. And one of the papers we just published recently was literally looking at all the ghost reports in Port Arthur. Port Arthur, over 25 years, there've been like 1,000 different reports of ghost activity, and that allowed us to look at the overall general pattern occurring over a long period of time. We found that significantly correlated with magnetic fields and sunspot activity. So there seems to be that there's something in the environment, the geomagnetic activity of the Earth, is correlated to the activity. It doesn't mean it's causing it, but when the activity is higher, so there's more people reporting ghosts, which is an interesting thing to look at.
Yes.
Because if you think about it, now that we know that there are certain periods during the year where we have more magnetic field activity, okay, because there's a season to this kind of stuff. There's a season just like summer and winter. There's a season for these geomagnetic storms. We can then essentially predict when people are going to be experiencing more ghost activity. So we can actually kind of find the ideal season to go ghost hunting, so to speak. So all these things kind of add together and just help increase our chance of actually getting a significant occurrence.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, fascinating. Thank you, Vlad. So if you want to see Vlad, come to the conference on the 21st of March or join us on the Ghost Investigation on the 13th of March. I'll put the link below, ghostbustersaustralia.com.au, and also I'll put Vlad's website address, the Australian Parapsychological Society. Is that right?
Research Association.
Research Association. So I'll get it right. Yeah. Great. All right. Thank you. And yeah, please come and we might see you there. Thank you, Vlad. Thanks very much for your time. It's been fascinating. Right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.